Nietzsche once wrote, "The higher your structure rises, the deeper must be your foundation." He wasn't speaking of buildings, he was speaking of minds. To build a mind so strong it terrifies people isn't about aggression or dominance. It's about silence that cuts deeper than noise. The kind of presence that bends the atmosphere of a room without uttering a word. The kind of clarity that makes the insecure tremble, not because you threaten them, but because your existence exposes their weakness. Most people think strength means confrontation, but the highest form of power is internal, the ability to remain unmoved while others beg for reaction. It's the quiet stare that sees through illusions, the discipline to stand alone, the wisdom to trust your own madness before trusting the crowd's sanity. A terrifying mind isn't cruel. It's awake. It doesn't seek control. It simply can't be controlled. It doesn't chase validation. It becomes the standard others measure against. This is how Nietzsche defined true mastery. Not in conquering others, but in conquering the chaos within. And when you finally do, when the storm inside you obeys, the world around you starts to kneel. 1. Strength is silent, not loud. Noise is the language of the insecure. Those who must prove their strength have already revealed their weakness. The loudest voice in the room rarely belongs to the strongest mind. It belongs to the most afraid. True strength doesn't perform. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't chase validation. It simply exists, quietly, immovably, like a mountain that doesn't need to shout to remind you it's there. Nietzsche understood this long before the world did. He saw that most people confuse expression with power, when in reality, noise is often camouflage for chaos. The mind that constantly asserts itself is trying to drown out the fear of its own fragility. But the mind that knows, truly knows, no longer feels the need to convince anyone. Silence in its pure form is terrifying, because silence cannot be read, predicted, or manipulated. It's the blank page that forces everyone else to confront the noise within themselves. The calm person in a heated room doesn't just hold composure, they hold control. When you cultivate that kind of calm, you shift from participating in chaos to commanding it. Others talk, you watch. Others react. You calculate. Others reveal themselves. You remain invisible. This is not passivity, it's precision. Silence is strategy. Every word you withhold gathers power. Every reaction you resist stores energy. You learn that control is not about domination, it's about preservation. The strongest mind wastes nothing. Not words, not emotion, not attention. In Nietzsche's view, self-mastery is the purest form of superiority. The one who governs himself rules others without effort. The one who cannot govern himself spends his life trying to prove he can. The irony is that silence achieves what argument never can. It commands respect through absence. When people meet someone who cannot be provoked, cannot be baited, cannot be broken, they instinctively retreat. They feel something ancient, something primal, because in every era calm has been mistaken for danger. Stillness unnerves the frantic because it exposes their lack of control. When you are silent, you become the mirror they can't escape. They see their insecurity reflected back to them, amplified by your composure. That's why people fear calm power. It doesn't react, it reveals. To build that kind of silence, you must first learn to stop explaining yourself. You owe no one your reasoning, your defense, or your validation. The moment you stop justifying, you begin to ascend. Every time you explain, you kneel. Every time you defend, you admit uncertainty. Let your presence speak. Let your actions echo. Let your restraint become your signature. You'll notice something strange. The quieter you become, the louder your energy grows. People start to sense you before you arrive. They choose their words more carefully. They feel the weight of your awareness. That's not intimidation, that's recognition. Because real strength doesn't fight for space. It creates space. And in that space, truth appears. Silence is not weakness. It's the sound of power under control. It's the presence that speaks after you stop. It's the moment everyone else runs out of words, and you still haven't used yours. That's when they understand you don't need to prove power when you are power. And the mind that has mastered silence has already mastered domination. The lion doesn't roar to remind you it's a predator. It simply looks, and everything remembers. 2. Question everything, even your own certainty. The most dangerous mind is not the one that knows. It's the one that questions what it knows. Because the moment you become sure, you stop growing. Certainty is the silent death of intelligence. Nietzsche understood this intimately. He wrote, "Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. A lie can be disproven. A conviction becomes a prison. When you stop questioning your own beliefs, you begin to worship them. And worship is the death of thought. The terrifying mind, the truly liberated mind, never kneels before any idea, not even its own. It treats every truth as a temporary bridge, not a home. It moves, dismantles, rebuilds, and never fears being wrong. Because to such a mind, being wrong is not failure, it's evolution. Most people, however, live as disciples of their own delusions. They confuse opinion for truth and comfort for wisdom. They clutch at their beliefs as if their identity would vanish without them, and it would. That's why they defend their ideas with such ferocity. It's not logic they're protecting, it's ego. To question everything is to perform surgery on the self. It's painful, it's humiliating, it's freedom. You begin to see how fragile your thoughts are, how much of what you believe was inherited, absorbed, or programmed. Your morality, your ambition, your fears, all borrowed costumes stitched together by culture and survival. To strip them off feels like dying, but it's the only path to truth. The mind that terrifies is the mind that can stand naked before the unknown and not flinch. That's why most people avoid introspection. They sense correctly that it will destroy them. It will dismantle the scaffolding of who they think they are. Nietzsche called this the great liberation, but liberation has a cost. Everything false must burn. When you begin to question even your certainty, you stop being manipulable. Propaganda, ideology, validation, none of it sticks. You become psychologically untouchable because nothing owns you. The herd will resent you for this. They will call you arrogant, contrarian, dangerous, and in a way, you are. You threaten the fragile order of shared delusion. But your rebellion isn't against others. It's against your own blindness. You ask not, is this right? But who told me this was right? Not, do I believe this? But why do I need to? And in that relentless questioning, you carve through illusion like a blade through silk. The mind becomes terrifying when it stops seeking comfort and starts seeking clarity. It sees hypocrisy not as a flaw of others, but as a mirror of itself. It dismantles self-deception daily, knowing that the unexamined belief is the root of every change. To question yourself is not to distrust your intellect, it's to sharpen it. Doubt becomes your whetstone. Every challenge to your thought cuts away dullness until only precision remains. The masses crave certainty because certainty feels safe. But safety is where intelligence dies. To build a mind so strong it terrifies people, you must first terrify yourself. You must question everything you've been taught to protect. You must watch your own opinions crumble and find joy in the ruin. Because when you emerge, rebuilt from the ashes of your old truth, your clarity will no longer be inherited. It will be earned, and that kind of mind cannot be swayed, controlled, or deceived. It doesn't argue, it doesn't defend. It simply sees, and what it sees terrifies those still asleep in their certainty. 3. Emotion is fuel, not a weapon against you. The world belongs to the few who can feel deeply and still remain unmoved. Most people believe strength means suppression, the denial of emotion. But Nietzsche understood the opposite. Power is not found in numbness, but in transmutation. The weak are ruled by what they feel. The strong use what they feel. Anger, fear, jealousy, desire, these are not enemies. They are signals, messengers from the unconscious, revealing where your power still sleeps. The ordinary man drowns in them. The extraordinary man distills them into clarity. Emotion only becomes dangerous when it moves without direction. When you are angry and react, the world controls you. When you are angry and observe, you control the world. Every emotion carries energy. The question is whether it burns you or builds you. Nietzsche once wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." He wasn't glorifying madness, he was teaching mastery. Chaos is not to be killed, but harnessed. The goal isn't to silence the storm. It's to become its conductor. The reactive person burns out quickly. The disciplined one burns with purpose. You can feel rage and use it to create focus. You can feel fear and turn it into heightened awareness. You can feel desire and redirect it into discipline. That is the alchemy of power, turning lower emotion into higher will. You don't escape emotion, you evolve it. The tragedy is that most people mistake emotion for truth. They assume that if they feel something, it must mean something. But emotion is not fact, it's data. It reveals your conditioning, your wounds, your triggers. The untrained mind obeys it blindly. The trained mind listens, learns, and then decides what to do with it. Emotional mastery begins the moment you realize that what you feel is not who you are. The ego wants identification. I am angry. I am afraid. I am jealous. But awareness whispers, anger is arising. Fear is passing. Jealousy is teaching. The shift is subtle, but it changes everything. To remain aware inside emotion is to become untouchable. Because once you can watch your own reactions, no one can weaponize them. They can insult, provoke, manipulate, but if you refuse to react, their power dissolves. The world is full of people trying to make you react. The marketplace thrives on outrage. Politics thrives on division. Weak men thrive on chaos. But when you no longer feed emotion into the collective fire, when you observe instead of react, you terrify them. You become unpredictable, unreadable. People fear what they can't manipulate. And emotionless doesn't mean heartless, it means sovereign. A mind that commands its emotions commands its destiny. Because emotion is the bridge between thought and action. If you can master the bridge, no external storm can move you. When Nietzsche wrote about self-overcoming, this is what he meant: to use what was once your cage as your engine, to feel every emotion fully, but to choose what it becomes. Pain becomes discipline. Fear becomes strategy. Desire becomes creation. Rage becomes resolve. That is how you build a mind so strong it terrifies, not by silencing emotion, but by making it obey. Because the highest power is not calmness without chaos. It's calmness within chaos. To the untrained, that looks supernatural. To the awakened, it's simply mastery. 4. Detach from the herd. Own your perspective. The greatest act of rebellion is to think for yourself. The world will tell you what to believe, who to fear, and what to chase, and most will obey without question, because belonging feels safer than truth. Conformity feels easier than consciousness. Nietzsche saw through this illusion long before most dared to. He called it the morality of the herd, the silent contract of mediocrity. The herd survives by agreement, not by awareness. It needs everyone to think alike because independent thought threatens its structure. To question the group is to expose its weakness. To stand apart is to reveal how fragile its unity really is. That is why the herd fears the individual, and why the individual must learn to walk alone. To detach from the herd is to break the spell of collective hypnosis. It's to stop borrowing your thoughts from society and start creating them from your own experience. It's to unlearn every idea that was fed to you about success, virtue, belonging, even love, and rebuild them from your own truth. But this freedom has a price. You will be misunderstood. You will be mocked. You will be labeled arrogant, dangerous, even mad. Nietzsche was called all of these, not because he was wrong, but because he refused to kneel. He didn't want followers. He wanted thinkers. He wanted people who could stand naked before their own minds without collapsing into fear. When you begin to think independently, you start to see how much of humanity runs on autopilot. They parrot what they've been told. They crave validation more than clarity. They defend ideas they've never examined. And worst of all, they mistake agreement for truth. To build a mind that terrifies people, you must learn to be alone in your conviction. You must accept that your perspective will isolate you, not because it's wrong, but because it's real. The herd thrives on comfort. You will thrive on truth, and those two cannot coexist. There's a moment in solitude, a terrifying moment, when you realize no one is coming to save you. No belief, no ideology, no crowd. That's where most turn back. They crawl back to the herd and call it safety. But the few who stay, the few who let that loneliness shake them, emerge unbreakable. Because once you've faced the silence of your own mind, no collective noise can sway you again. Detaching doesn't mean despising others. It means seeing clearly how conditioning operates and choosing not to participate in it. It's recognizing that collective opinion is often a reflection of collective fear. The independent thinker doesn't rebel to be different. They rebel to be authentic. They don't reject the world out of bitterness. They reject illusion out of integrity. And here lies the paradox. Once you detach, people begin to follow. Not because you sought their approval, but because your independence becomes magnetic. The herd senses power and those who need nothing from it. When you no longer require agreement, your truth becomes undeniable. When you no longer seek validation, your presence becomes law. When you stop echoing noise, your silence becomes influence. Nietzsche's terrifying insight was this: the one who stands alone shapes the world of those who can't. The herd may mock the lone thinker, but it's always the lone thinker who leads the herd's children. So detach, stand apart. Let solitude harden you and clarity define you. Because once you own your perspective, the world stops owning you. And that is the birth of power. Quiet, solitary, and absolute. 5. The mind that understands consequences controls reality. Brute strength terrifies the weak. Foresight terrifies the powerful. Because physical force can be countered, but a mind that sees the chain of consequences before they unfold, that kind of power rewrites the game entirely. Nietzsche understood this distinction. He saw that true superiority was not in violence or intellect alone. It was in the awareness of patterns, the ability to predict how ideas, emotions, and actions ripple through time. Most people live reactively, trapped in the immediacy of impulse. They see only the moment in front of them. The powerful see the web. Every move in reality, every word, gesture, and decision carries momentum. The average mind feels consequences only when they arrive. The strong mind anticipates them before they exist. When you understand consequence, you stop being reactive and start becoming inevitable. You no longer chase, you calculate. You no longer fight, you position. You no longer hope, The terrifying thing about such a mind is not that it's cold or emotionless. It's that it's strategic. It knows when to be silent, when to act, when to withdraw, and when to strike. The wise don't waste energy on battles they can't win. They shape the terrain until victory becomes unavoidable. People call this manipulation because they don't understand mastery. Manipulation seeks control over others. Mastery seeks harmony with consequence. Nietzsche wrote, "The superior man is distinguished from the inferior by his fearlessness in facing the consequences of his actions." But what he left unsaid is this: fearlessness comes not from recklessness, but from understanding. When you can see 10 moves ahead, you no longer fear the game. You become the game. To build this kind of mind, you must train your perception to expand beyond the present. Begin by studying cause and effect in yourself first. Every emotion has a trigger. Every decision has an echo. Every word you release carries invisible weight. The masses live blind to this. They speak without intention, act without reflection, and then wonder why chaos follows them. They call it bad luck, fate, or karma. It's not fate, it's mathematics. Reality is not random. It's responsive. And the one who understands that response holds the keys to it. To understand consequence is to master subtlety. You learn to wait. You learn to let others reveal themselves. You allow impulsive minds to destroy themselves while you move quietly through the ruins they leave behind. This isn't cruelty, it's awareness. Because every emotional reaction, every uncontrolled outburst is a broadcast of weakness. Those who can't see beyond the now become slaves to it. They trade their long-term power for short-term comfort. But foresight terrifies people because it looks like magic. It looks supernatural when someone always seems prepared, unshaken, one step ahead. In truth, it's not magic. It's discipline. It's pattern recognition. It's living with eyes open while everyone else is sleepwalking through their own impulses. When you grasp consequence deeply enough, your movements become minimal and precise. You don't need to force reality, you align with it. You stop reacting to chaos and start designing outcomes. Others will mistake your calm for luck. They won't see the invisible architecture you've built, the anticipation, the restraint, the endless observation. And that's how a terrifying mind moves. It doesn't overpower reality. It orchestrates it. Because while the world is busy reacting to noise, the mind that understands consequence is already shaping the next moment. Quietly, deliberately, inevitably. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. And those who live without foresight will always call it fate. In the end, a strong mind doesn't roar. It doesn't chase power, praise, or proof. It simply becomes a force that reality begins to orbit around. Nietzsche understood that the greatest danger and the greatest freedom lies in building a mind that no longer bends to noise, emotion, or fear. You begin as everyone else does, ruled by impulse, ego, and the herd. But through solitude, questioning, emotional alchemy, and foresight, you become something different. You stop needing to convince, compete, or conform. You see through appearances. You read motives like open books. You move with quiet precision while the world stumbles in noise. That's why the strong mind terrifies people. Not because it seeks to harm, but because it cannot be controlled. Its calm exposes chaos. Its silence exposes insecurity. Its detachment exposes dependence. The world doesn't fear the thinker who argues. It fears the one who sees. And when you finally build that kind of mind forged in solitude, sharpened by questioning, anchored in clarity, you stop living as a participant in chaos and start existing as the still center of it. That's not arrogance. It's ascension. And from that height, you no longer need to shout your strength. You simply are strength. If this spoke to the part of you that's awakening, subscribe and keep walking the path of quiet power.